In September 1978, Rodney Alcala appeared on The Dating Game as Bachelor number 1. He was charming, funny, and comfortable under the studio lights in a way that reads, watching the footage today, as someone who had spent a lot of time learning how to make people feel at ease around him. The Bachelorette chose him. The audience cheered. What nobody in that studio knew was that Alcala had already killed at least 4 women and was in the middle of one of the most active periods of his criminal life. This is the case of Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. Rodney James Alcala was born in 1943 in San Antonio, Texas. His father left when he was a child, and the family spent several years in Mexico before returning to the United States. He studied fine arts at UCLA, later attended NYU Film School under Roman Polanski, and at some point settled into an identity built around photography that served him in ways that had nothing to do with art. The photography mattered because of what it gave him access to. He was good-looking, well-spoken, and knew how to approach a stranger with a camera in a way that felt like a compliment rather than an intrusion. Women agreed to be photographed. They agreed to move somewhere quieter, somewhere with better light. That was usually where things ended for them. The first confirmed attack happened in 1968. Alcala brought an 8-year-old girl named Tali Shapiro into his Los Angeles apartment. A neighbor saw them go in and called the police. Officers broke down the door and found Tali alive, but severely beaten and sexually assaulted. Alcala was already gone through the back of the building. He went to New York, enrolled in NYU Film School under a false name, and spent 2 years completely off the radar. In 1971, a camp counselor in New Hampshire recognized his face from an FBI Most Wanted bulletin and called authorities. He was brought back to California, took a plea deal on a reduced charge of child molestation, and walked out of prison in 1974 after 3 years. Within months, he attacked a 13-year-old girl in Huntington Beach. 2 more years in prison. Released again in 1977. The period between 1977 and 1979 is where the case becomes genuinely difficult to account for, because what is documented is almost certainly a fraction of what actually happened during those 2 years. Alcala was working regularly as a photographer, moving between California and other states, approaching women in public spaces with his camera. The ones who survived described the same thing independently of each other. A man who could be warm and disarming right up until the moment he wasn't, who would attack and then seemingly stop, let the victim believe the worst was over, and then continue. Forensic psychiatrists who studied his behavior described this pattern as deliberate and specific, something he repeated because the stopping and starting gave him something the killing alone didn't. The murders confirmed from this period are Jill Barcombe, 18 years old, found in the Hollywood Hills in November 1977. Georgia Wickstead, 27, found in her Malibu apartment the following month. Charlotte Lamb, 32, found in the laundry room of an apartment complex in El Segundo in June 1978. Jill Parento, 21, found strangled in her Burbank apartment a year later, and Robin Samsoe, 12 years old, who disappeared riding her bicycle to a ballet class in Huntington Beach in June 1979, and whose remains were found in the mountains near Glendale weeks later. Her earrings turned up in a storage locker registered to Alcala. These are the 5 murders for which he was ultimately convicted. Investigators have consistently believed the actual number of victims fell somewhere between 50 and 130 across more than a decade. That gap exists because Alcala never gave a complete accounting, and because a substantial portion of the women he photographed and may have killed were never identified. The storage locker contained over 1,000 photographs. Most of the faces in them remain unknown. In September 1978, between the killings of Charlotte Lamb and Jill Parento, Rodney Alcala drove to a television studio in Los Angeles and taped an episode of The Dating Game. The production company ran background checks on contestants, but the process in 1978 had significant limitations, particularly for someone whose most serious crimes had never resulted in serious charges. Alcala passed the screening. He sat on a stool behind a partition and answered questions from Cheryl Bradshaw, the Bachelorette, on the other side, while the audience watched. He was confident and quick, and clearly understood how to perform for a camera in a way that the other 2 bachelors didn't.
Okay, and we're going to start by having them say hello to you and see how they sound. Number 1, would you say hello to Cheryl, please?
We're going to have a great time together, Cheryl.
Okay, and this is your date, and I want to tell you something about him. Cheryl, he's a skydiver, so he's got a lot of nerve. He's into motorcycling. He's also a fine photographer. Say hello to Rodney Alcala. Rodney, come on and say hello. Congratulations, Rod. You did it with a 1 answer.
Cheryl chose him. After taping ended, she met him backstage for the first time and told producers almost immediately that she didn't want to go on the date. In interviews given years later, after the full scope of his crimes became public, she described a feeling she couldn't fully articulate, something in the way he looked at her and engaged with her in person that made her want to be somewhere else. She turned down the date. There is no way to know what would have happened if she hadn't. What is known is that Alcala left the studio, and that within months, Robin Samsoe was dead. Alcala was arrested in 1979 and convicted of Robin Samsoe's murder in 1980. The California Supreme Court overturned the conviction 4 years later because jurors had been improperly told about his prior sex offenses, a procedural issue significant enough under California law to require a new trial. He was convicted again and sentenced to death again. That conviction was also overturned in 2001. This time, over problems with how evidence had been presented to the jury. By the time his 3rd trial began in 2010, the legal landscape had changed considerably. DNA technology had connected him definitively to all 5 murders, and he faced all the charges simultaneously. He chose to represent himself, which under California law he was entitled to do, and which gave him the ability to cross-examine his own surviving victims in the 3rd person, addressing himself throughout as Mr. Alcala, as if he were a separate attorney arguing on a client's behalf. One of the women he questioned had survived an attack by him decades earlier. She sat in the witness box and answered questions from the man who had tried to kill her. Before addressing the jury in his closing argument, he played the entirety of "Yes, We Can" by the Pointer Sisters, without explaining why. The jury convicted him on all counts. He was sentenced to death for the 5th time. The 1,000-plus photographs found in Alcala's storage locker represent the part of this case that has never been resolved, and probably never will be. The New York Police Department and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released batches of them publicly over the years, asking for help with identification. Some people recognized themselves or someone they knew. The majority of the photographs remain unidentified. Each face in those photographs is someone who was alone with Rodney Alcala at some point, with a camera pointed at them. Some of them are certainly alive. Some of them are certainly not. There is no way to know which is which without names, and most of the names are gone. Alcala died in prison in July 2021 at 77 years old, still on death row from natural causes. California's death penalty had been suspended years earlier, so the sentence he received 5 times over the course of 3 decades was never carried out. The number of people he killed went to the grave with him. What the case left behind, aside from the unresolved photographs and the families of confirmed victims, is the footage from that September afternoon in 1978. It still exists. You can watch it. He is relaxed and funny and seems to be genuinely enjoying himself. Cheryl Bradshaw is behind the partition and cannot see him. The audience is laughing. Nothing about what you are watching looks like what it is. New case every week. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.